Hello, my name is Brenda Gayle Plummer. I'm the author of In Search of Power, African Americans in the Age of Decolonization, 1956 to 1974. I wrote this book because I knew that the world had changed dramatically between 1956 and 1974 in ways that at the time no one could have predicted or directed. And African Americans were deeply involved in the momentous transformations that were taking place at this period. The research is based on archives, interviews, and a lot of reading. This is a book about connections between African American history, African diaspora history, and the history of foreign relations. Well, why decolonization? People often think the United States had no colonies, but it did and does have colonies. And just as importantly, it operated in an international system where some of its key allies were fighting to preserve the colonial system. When decisions were made to support those allies, it was often as a result of the desire to maintain an international order whose definition of stability allowed only gradual change. The central figures in this book were people in institutions who were all about opening up the system. We often remember the 1960s as the period in which many African colonies became independent states, but we sometimes forget that new nations arose in the Caribbean too. People in all of these countries were interested in questions of freedom, economic development, and precisely how they would be governed. In Search of Power describes the international aspects of the Black Power movement in ways that you won't find in any other work. So African Americans were involved in all of this as members of non-governmental groups that challenged the exclusive franchise of officials and elites on decision-making. They promoted contacts with foreign governments and other external agents. They explicitly linked the struggle against racism in the United States to world affairs. They used a vocabulary of their experiences in the United States to help shape an international dialogue. Race lies at the heart of my analysis. It is fundamentally embedded in every aspect of U.S. history and culture. But as formal segregation became unworkable domestically, so did a foreign policy that tacitly accepted the idea of racial hierarchy. In short, Jim Crow hampered U.S. objectives abroad in a time of increased international competition. In Search of Power traces a fascinating story that links a Black transnational history to some of the most critical issues of the 20th century.